It was during the spring of 1988 near Bishopville, South Carolina, when my life changed forever. As I trudged down the familiar road leading to my dad's small farm on the outskirts of town, the memories flooded back to me. 2 years earlier, at the age of 18, I left this town with nothing but a backpack slung over my shoulder and the shoes I chose to wear that day. Back then, leaving seemed like the only choice. The promise of a better life beckoned me from afar. And by far, I only ended up a whole 100 miles away. I moved in with David down in Charleston, a man 2 decades my senior who owned a magnificent house by the beach. At first, it was exhilarating. Parties, freedom, and the allure of a carefree lifestyle sounded amazing. But as time passed, the gloss of novelty wore off, revealing the cracks beneath the surface. What I thought would be a fresh start turned into a suffocating existence, a life that felt more like a cage with each passing day. I endured, hoping things would change, clinging to the illusion that somehow, somewhere, there was a silver lining. But hope can only sustain you for so long. One night, the weight of my discontent became too much to bear. David's indifference to my grievances was the final straw, and I found myself unceremoniously cast out onto the unforgiving streets of Charleston. With nowhere else to turn, I made the long journey back to Bishopville, swallowing my pride and humbly asking my dad to take me back in. He did. But the comfort of home came with a bitter twist. I no longer had a room of my own. It was a small price to pay for my impulsive departure all those years ago, but it still stung. What unsettled me most, however, was who took my place. His name is Jason Brewster. He was the same age as me, with his brooding demeanor and the weight of rumors that clung to him. How had he become the only employee on my dad's farm? It was a question that festered in the back of my mind. The whispers still lingered, haunting reminders of the tragedy which ripped through our small town 4 years earlier. Jason's best friend, gone in an instant during a hunting trip gone awry. Of course, the town thought the worst of him, and I wasn't too far from their way of thinking. The wounds were still raw, the scars still tender, and yet there we were, forced to coexist in the same space. I tried not to think about the rumors. I did my best to push aside the fear that simmered beneath the surface whenever his towering figure loomed into view. But the truth was, I couldn't shake the unease that settled in the pit of my stomach whenever our paths crossed, which only happened 100 times a day. Little did I know returning home would unearth more than simple memories. My return would unravel secrets long buried beneath the surface of our sleepy town. My dad greeted me with a distant approach. The way Jason looked at me made me certain he was not happy I returned. I wished I had more to do that weekend, but outside of church, there wasn't much for anyone with no money. I welcomed Monday and got a ride from my dad into town to look for work. This was my first step in this direction, so I felt like I could afford to be a little picky. By afternoon, I was spent. As I trudged wearily down the dusty road, uncertainty pricked my shoulders until the tenseness creaked down my back. The sun beat down mercilessly, casting harsh shadows on the cracked pavement as I made my way back to the farm. My feet hurt, my back hurt, even my eyes. But it was a small price to pay to get me back on my feet and back out of that town. I couldn't stick around. Sure, it was the 80s, but in the Kakalaki, none of that mattered. I'd die if I stuck around. The heat of May pressed down on me, reminding me of the cool ocean breeze and salty air of Charleston. Despite everything, despite the pain and the heartache, I found myself longing for the familiar embrace of that city, for the comfort of the life I left behind. Lost in my thoughts, I barely noticed the large black car pulling up beside me until the familiar voice broke through the haze of my mind. It was Jason, offering me a ride home. I hesitated for only a moment before accepting, grateful for the reprieve from the relentless heat of the afternoon sun. Besides, it would have been very rude in that part of the world in those days to refuse such an offer, even if it made you uncomfortable. As we neared the farm, a sense of unease settled over me. The sight of the broken screen door and the empty silence that greeted us confused me for a few moments when I didn't fully understand what was going on. Then it hit me. Someone broke into the house. I never heard of anything like that in Bishopville. especially when I'm sure the doors were all unlocked and breaking anything was unnecessary. Jason wasted no time in bringing his '78 Monte Carlo to a stop and throwing it in park with an upward motion before yanking the keys out of the column. I barely slid off the bench seat before he was striding purposefully up the steps towards the open door, with clenched fists and determination etched into his features. I watched him disappear into the darkness of the house, the minutes stretching into an eternity as I waited anxiously outside. Panic threatened to consume me as I realized he had the keys. If something were to happen, I would be utterly helpless, stranded in the middle of nowhere with no one to turn to. Then I felt guilty for only worrying about myself, which I'm sure is how I ended up in Charleston in the first place. Finally, with a resounding bang, Jason appeared from the house, his face flushed with anger and frustration. Without a word, he stalked around to the side of the house, leaving me to follow in his wake. It was then that I noticed the discarded pair of men's underwear lying on the ground, a silent testament to the chaos that unfolded within. He must have seen them from his bedroom window. The flush in his cheeks told me they were his. We agreed that whatever did this was not a person but most likely an animal. This idea would have made me feel at ease if it weren't for the darkening look in his already darkened eyes. Together we removed all traces left behind by whatever breached the sanctity of our home. We worked in silence, the tension thick in the air as we both remained vigilant, alert to every sound and movement around us. He repaired the screen door while I cleaned up the bits of spilled food and broken glass. When my dad finally returned, he didn't even bother to ask what happened to the door. Jason retreated to the bedroom that had once been mine, and I found myself alone once more. With trembling hands, I bolted the front door, the rusted deadbolt catching in its track with a harsh metallic rasp. It did the job fine. I just don't remember it ever being used before. In that moment, I realized how fragile our sense of security truly was, and how easily it could be shattered by the harsh realities of the world outside. Whatever animal that was strong enough to break a wooden screen door in half surely was strong enough to break a window. The rest of the week went by without issue. Jason and I mostly forgot about the animal as well as each other. Friday found things a bit more settled. Both men I lived with smiled more than they did when I first arrived, and I didn't feel like such a stranger sleeping on the couch. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the three of us sat in comfortable silence, nursing our beers after a hearty meal at Sonic. My dad, tired from a long week of hard work on the farm, retired indoors, leaving Jason and me alone in the fading light. We sat side by side on the porch swing, the rhythmic creaking a soothing accompaniment to the chorus of crickets that filled the evening air. Despite the years of proximity, it struck me as strange how we never truly became friends. We shared so much of our lives, scout troops, church pews, the cramped confines of our small school, and yet, there had always been a distance between us. I glanced over at him, taking in the familiar lines of his face in the soft glow of the porch light. For the first time, I noticed the vulnerability that lurked behind his stoic facade, the weight of his past etched into the lines of his brow. For the first time, I thought it would be an absolute shame if he let the lines go on for so long that they became permanent. Such a waste of natural beauty. Surprisingly, he opened up to me in a way I hadn't expected, revealing layers of himself that I never seen before. And as we talked, I realized that we had more in common than I ever expected. He wasn't the intimidating figure I always perceived him to be, but rather a man burdened by his own demons, like the rest of us. As we leaned back, gazing up at the twinkling stars scattered across the night sky, a fleeting moment of intimacy passed between us. For a heartbeat, I almost believed that he would lean in and kiss me. Before anything more could happen, a sharp bang destroyed the tranquility of the night, jolting us both to our feet. We raced to the back of the house, hearts pounding in our chests, only to be met by the sight of my dad standing there, his face etched with confusion and anger. His truck, parked haphazardly in the driveway, bore the marks of a senseless act of vandalism. It was definitely not the work of an animal. Well, not a literal one anyway. Strange holes and scratches marred the surface, leaving my dad fuming with righteous indignation. I understood the anger and confusion, but we'd all be kidding ourselves if we didn't admit his truck wasn't already a piece of crap. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the stillness of the night. But as I looked at Jason, I saw something else lurking beneath the fear in his eyes. I saw a deeper, more profound terror that had nothing to do with the damage to my dad's truck. It was the fear of the unknown, the fear of what might have been if we gave in to the moment that passed between us on the porch. In that moment, I realized that even the strongest of men are made of softer stuff beneath the surface, their bravado nothing more than a fragile facade masking the vulnerabilities that lie within. And as we stood there, bathed in the soft glow of the porch light, I knew that some secrets were better left buried in the darkness of the night. The decision to leave town weighed heavily on my mind as I pounded the pavement, dropping off job applications at any place that offered the promise of a paycheck. I didn't care what kind of work I would have to do. I couldn't afford to stick around, to get too involved with anyone, especially not Jason. The thought of getting attached to him filled me with a sense of dread, a fear of the inevitable complications that would arise from pursuing someone who wasn't ready to come out. Of course, I knew I was once again only thinking about myself, but is self-preservation not the first key to survival? This walk home was very similar to the last, down to the part where Jason again found me 30 minutes in on the 2-hour walk home. When he offered me a ride once again, I mustered the courage to decline, the words leaving my lips with a newfound determination. I couldn't risk getting caught up in the tangled web of his personal drama, especially not when it involved secrets that were not mine to uncover. You know, it wasn't only about me, but about him too. I would want someone who isn't afraid to love me, and I would push him to be that person way before he was even ready for it. As he drove by my side, the tension between us palpable in the stifling heat of the afternoon sun, fate intervened in the form of a flat tire. I hesitated, torn between the instinct to continue on my own and the nagging sense of responsibility that compelled me to stay. Couldn't leave him stranded on the side of the road, vulnerable and alone. It would have been cruel, heartless, a betrayal of the fragile bond that formed between us in the short time we knew each other. Even if I had no idea how to change a flat, I couldn't have left him to do it alone. I tried not to watch him too closely as he bent down to put the jack in the proper spot, then worked his body into a roughness as he jacked up the heavy coupe. A small smile escaped his lips as he noticed me swallow after he took off his overshirt, revealing how he filled out a white tank top. As he worked to change the tire, a sense of unease settled over me, the hairs on the back of my arms prickling with a primal sense of danger. Something was watching us. It wasn't a feeling of curiosity, but a feeling of predatory anger. I glanced over at Jason, his expression tense with apprehension, as he stood and scanned the tree line for any sign of movement. He felt it too. Whatever it was, he felt it too. We both knew that we were not alone, that whatever lurked in the darkness was not content to remain hidden for long. Silence was broken by the sound of a rock landing nearby, the sudden noise sending a jolt of adrenaline coursing through my veins. I stumbled backwards, colliding with Jason in my haste to put distance between myself and the unseen threat. For a moment, we stood frozen in place, our hearts pounding in unison as the sounds of movement echoed through the stillness of the afternoon. Whatever was out there, it was not alone, and we were woefully unprepared to face whatever darkness lay waiting for us. The adrenaline surged through my veins as he swiftly finished changing his tire, his movements quick and efficient as he worked to secure our escape route. My eyes remained fixed on the tree line surrounding us, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement, any hint of the danger that lurked beyond our reach. With the tire changed, we wasted no time in making our way back home, the tension thick in the air as we approached the familiar confines. But as we pulled up, a sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. My dad was gone again, leaving us alone to face whatever horrors awaited us in the darkness. Without a word, he grabbed my dad's shotgun and a box of shells from the gun cabinet, his expression grim as he loaded 5 shells into the weapon. We sat in silence for a long time, the anticipation beating us like a second hand on an analog clock, because whatever it was followed us home. It encircled the small farm. It encircled us from all directions. Despite being two entirely different people, we were still country boys, and those woods, that was our country. We could feel it in our bones as well as the birds that something was very far off. And then it happened. A heavy thud echoed through the house from the other side, sending us scrambling to the back window in a desperate bid to catch a glimpse of our unseen assailant. What we saw defied belief, sending a shiver down my spine as I locked eyes with Jason, a silent acknowledgement passing between us. In that moment, as I looked into his eyes, I saw a reflection of myself mirrored back at me. We shared an understanding of the horrors that lay in wait beyond our sanctuary. I held him close, seeking solace in the warmth of his embrace as he readied his weapon, his strong arms a lifeline in the darkness. As he raised the shotgun to the glass, a sense of futility washed over me. I couldn't fathom how a blast from his weapon could penetrate the barrier that separated us from the monsters and hit them at the same time. But before I could voice my doubts, a commotion erupted from the hallway, the sound of chaos echoing through the stillness of the night. And then, with terrifying speed, one of the creatures burst into the room, its twisted form looming over us with malicious intent. I froze, paralyzed with fear, as Jason sprang into action, his movements swift and decisive as he fired round after round into the creature's grotesque form, each blast sending this monster another step back into the hall. He didn't stop until the gun was spent, the echoes of gunfire ringing in my ears as the creature stumbled back toward the front door. It worked to our advantage that it didn't seem to understand what a gun was. For a moment we stood in stunned silence, the weight of what happened sinking in as the adrenaline began to fade. But as the reality of our situation set in, I knew that this was only the beginning. The true battle lay ahead, waiting for us in the darkness that stretched beyond the safety of our sanctuary. The encounter left our home tainted with the stench of blood and gunpowder. His hands shook as he reloaded the shotgun, his movements unsteady as he struggled to steady his nerves in the wake of our narrow escape. I stood behind him, offering what little support I could, my fingers clutching his shirt tightly as we navigated the slick floors stained with the creature's blood. Every step was a testament to our resilience, a silent declaration of our determination to survive against all odds. We made our way to the front room, the air filled with the scent of death as we surveyed the scene before us. The three-clawed creature lay motionless on the ground outside, its lifeless eyes staring blankly into the abyss, while others of its kind dragged its limp form away from the house with eerie efficiency. None of them spared us a second glance as they disappeared into the darkness. Their silent retreat, a chilling reminder of the merciless nature of our foes. But despite the lingering threat that loomed on the horizon, Jason let out a long sigh of relief, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. I couldn't help but question his sudden display of emotion, the confusion clear in my voice as I asked, "What? Why are you smiling?" He turned to me, his eyes alight with a sense of closure that long eluded him. "He looked at me," he said simply, the weight of his words hanging in the air. "I finally killed the three-clawed monster who ate my best friend." In that moment, as I looked into his eyes, I realized that our bond evolved into something deeper and more profound than I could have ever expected. The days that followed were a blur of newfound intimacy and shared moments of tenderness, each passing day bringing us closer together until it became impossible to deny the depth of our connection. I couldn't tell you when we became a couple, but I can say with certainty that I was happier one night in his arms than I had ever been in the whole 2 years I spent with David. But as summer waned and the chill of autumn settled over the land, we knew that we couldn't stay any longer. Jason was plagued by restless nights and haunted by the memories of that fateful night. We knew that he would never find peace in South Carolina. We knew we would have no choice but to leave our home. So we packed our bags and left, our destination set for the cold embrace of Wisconsin, far from the swamps and the creatures that haunted our nightmares. And as we drove away from the only home we had ever known, I couldn't help but wonder how long it would be before someone else befell one of those creatures.